In 1905, Lord Curzon partitioned Bengal. The official justification was administrative efficiency. The province was large, the paperwork unmanageable. The actual effect was to split the most politically dangerous population in the empire along a religious seam. 4 years later, the Morley Minto reforms went further. They introduced separate electorates, a legal architecture in which Hindus voted as Hindus and Muslims voted as Muslims. Not as farmers, not as weavers, not as tenants of the same landlord, as communities. Understand precisely what was engineered there. The empire did not invent Indian religious difference. That would be absurd. It was already there, and for long stretches it had coexisted without catastrophe. What the empire did was far cleverer. It made religious identity the only currency in which political demands could be denominated. Once your grievance had to be filed as a Hindu grievance or a Muslim grievance, it could never again be filed as a poor man's grievance. And the moment that became true, the landlord and the mill owner and the collector would sleep soundly for another 50 years. Now look at your phone. Look at what arrives on it every morning. Look at what is trending. Look at what the anchor is shouting about tonight and the night after and the night after that. And ask yourself a single question. Is this a different playbook, or is it the same playbook with better distribution? Everything I have said so far, a determined skeptic would dismiss as theory. Cognitive science and colonial history. Interesting, unfalsifiable, easily ignored. So now let me stop theorizing. And let me hand the argument over to the Supreme Court of India. On the 15th of February 2024, a 5-judge constitution bench struck down the electoral bond scheme. Understand what the scheme had been. Since 2018, any company, including a loss-making company, including a company incorporated 3 weeks earlier, could hand an unlimited sum of money to a political party, and you, the voter, were forbidden from knowing about it. By the time it was struck down, that single instrument accounted for 56% of all political funding in India. Now listen to what the court said about the nature of those payments. It described corporate contributions as purely business transactions made with the intent of securing benefits in return. That is not an opposition slogan. That is not my characterization. That is the Supreme Court of India in a unanimous judgment describing the mechanism by which policy is purchased in this country. And the court went further. It observed that the scheme allowed enormous corporate contributions to drown out the small donations of the ordinary citizen. The student, the daily wage worker, the teacher, the person who gives because he believes something and expects nothing back. Now put the second document beside it. In March 2024, the World Inequality Lab published a study of Indian income and wealth across a century, authored by Nitin Kumar Bharti, Lucas Chancel, Thomas Piketty and Anmol Sumanchi. Their finding: in 2022 to 23, the top 1% of Indians took 22.6% of national income, the highest share in the series since 1922, higher than during the colonial interwar period. The top 1% held 40.1% of national wealth. The authors gave that arrangement a name. They called it the Billionaire Raj, and observed that it is now more unequal than the British Raj it replaced. My dear countrymen, sit with that sentence. We spent 200 years and an ocean of blood expelling an empire that extracted our wealth and concentrated it in a few hands. And by the measurable distribution of income, we have built something more concentrated than what we expelled. Now I know what the honest skeptic is thinking, and he is right to think it. India in 2026 is vastly richer than India in 1930. Absolute poverty has fallen enormously. The poorest Indian today lives better than the poorest Indian then. All of that is true, and none of it is in dispute. But inequality is not a claim about absolute levels. It is a claim about who captured the growth. And on that question, the number is unambiguous. The growth happened. It simply did not come to you.